live in a sedentary lifestyle. I just saw a report that came out January of this year from the CDC that said that 25% of the population of the United States engages in no physical activity whatsoever. Zero.
Unbelievable. And how did this happen all of a sudden? It's like, I sorry, and I don't want to go off in too much of a tangent, but I remember somebody posting a picture of like a beach in the 1970s and like it's thin people, and then you counterbalance that with the beach of 2022. And it just seems like in a very short amount of time, whether it's the food, whether it's the pharmaceuticals, whether it's a lack of movement, we've just completely changed ourselves as human beings.
Yes. And I love the way that you phrased it, is we've changed ourselves, not that it hasn't happened to us. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're absolutely right. It's very different than when I grew up, So there's some really strange things in there. Now, when you take that statistic and you say 25% of the population doesn't move, we've got 71% of the population that's overweight or obese. Now, here's how that ties into chronic pain. Movement is one of the body's natural pain control mechanisms.
Okay.
So this is super cool. In the early 1990s, there was a doctor. He was a neurosurgeon in Florida named Husheng Hushman, and I love his name, and I'll never forget it.
Great name.
But unfortunately, he's passed away at this point, because I'm so mad. I really would have loved to interview him for my show. But he made some amazing discoveries. He wrote a book amongst many other accomplishments. But he made a discovery that essentially, when movement stimulus to your brain decreases, subconscious pain signals to the brain go up. So it exists on a teeter-totter. So this is absolutely fascinating stuff. And we have evidence of this all over the place if you know what you're looking for. So the classic example is this. If somebody goes in for a hip replacement or a knee replacement nowadays, they get them moving the same day.
Right. And that's different, right, than it used to be. It used to be they don't want you to move, but they're saying you got to move. Movement is life.
You got it. Movement is life. And so if you keep somebody on bed rest, or you rest them after a big surgery like a joint replacement, it leads to worse outcomes. It means they take longer to rehabilitate. They are in more pain, so they consume more drugs, oftentimes narcotic strength pain-killing drugs, and they take longer to get better, and they have worse outcomes, higher likelihood of infection, all these types of things. You get them up and moving, they take less drugs, they get better faster, they're in a better mood, so they communicate nicer with the hospital and rehabilitation staff. They are better patients, and it makes the surgeon look way better. Here's something else that's super cool. They realized, and in some hospitals, they won't even let you go in for those types of surgeries unless you've done a movement exercise prehabilitation program to get yourself prepared to do the surgery.
That's really encouraging to hear that, because, the way I look at it, it's like this giant ship that's the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry and all the competing interests and big food, big pharma. And it's encouraging to hear that, because the layperson's view of it is like, that stuff doesn't change very much. But when I hear things like that, like I think you use prehabilitation that is really encouraging.
Yes, it is. At some point, Scott, it becomes unsustainable. Doctors have gotten into this profession to help people. I don't believe that there's a bunch of bad doctors out there.
Right.
Yeah, it's a long path to go through. You have to have something inside of you that drives you to go through that much stuff. You go into a lot of debt. It's a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of hours studying with your head in the books. It takes a lot. I don't believe that there's a lot of bad doctors out there. I do believe that hospitals are being run for profit at this point, and they're being run by people with business degrees. And so you have this conflict of interest. And I've had this conversation with multiple patients of mine who are medical doctors for 30 or 40 years. And they tell me about the difference between practicing medicine when they started their career versus now. But at some point, what I said was it becomes unsustainable, because when you create this type of model that we're in now, which is a dependency for-profit model where they're trying to get somebody on a drug and keep them on a drug throughout their life. So you have a lifelong customer. Yeah. It becomes untenable because you don't have enough resources to give these people. And so you have hospitals like, say, the Mayo Clinic. They did a really interesting study a while back where this one was so cool. I was just tickled when it came out, because they did something along the lines of, they had people sign up to get their appointments. And in order to get their appointments, they said, look, we have a very limited amount of staff that can deal with these type of, I think they were gastrointestinal problems. And they said, so it's a 3-4 month waiting list. And in order to get in to see these practitioners, you have to do this 3-month program of diet and exercise. Well, what they found was at the end of this 3-month program, it was something like 75 or 80% of the patients didn't need to see the doctor anymore because they just got them on a lifestyle program.
Wow.
So those are the types of interventions that we're talking about here, where you take the large portion of our society that's not exercising, that's not eating in a way that creates health in the body, and not moving their body in a way that creates health. And you get them doing those things, and the body's so amazing that, wow, look at that. The majority of their problems went away just by doing the bare minimum. It's like your car. Like, if you never take it in to change the oil and rotate the tires and do the basic stuff, like, you shouldn't really be surprised if you're broken down and stranded on the side of the road.